Hello, friends. Welcome to Listening to the Verde Season 3, brought to you by Friends of the Verde River. Friends of the Verde River exists because we cannot imagine a world without a healthy and flowing Verde River. This program is designed to inspire, engage, and inform you about everything that makes the Verde healthy. That includes water, land, and people. And I'm here today with Steve Ayers, the recently retired or former economic director of the Town of Camp Verde. Thank you, Steve, for joining me.
Thanks. It's always great to be here, Nancy. Love working with you guys.
Well, we've loved working with you. I'm going to just give our viewers a little bit of your background, and then we'll go on with the interview. So Steve, for the past 10 years, has been the Economic Development Director for the Town of Camp Verde. This was his third career. Prior to joining Camp Verde, he had a career in journalism with the Verde Independent, the Camp Verde Bugle, and he did that for about
8 years.
About 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And during those 8 years as a journalist, he wrote extensively on the Verde River, environmental issues, local agriculture, and Verde Valley history, along with covering community issues. And before that, he worked for 24 years in sales and marketing, which I also find very interesting, kind of a natural progression there. Steve, tell me, just what does an economic development director do, or what did you do as in that job?
Well, my daughter asked me that question one time, and my short answer was, well, I get people to write checks with lots of zeros behind them.
Yeah, that's good.
But I mean, economic development is a really broad subject because there's very few things that take place in government that are not touched in some way, shape, or form in the broad scope of economic development. So we have carried out a plan that sort of mixes creative placemaking, I'll call it that, with conventional economic development. And so most of the work that I've done has either been related with the conventional stuff, which is roads, sewers, getting the infrastructure built there, business attraction, business retention, and all those typical things they teach you in a college course on how to do economic development. But we've tried to blend that with this sense of place development, this creative placemaking, whereby it's one thing to grow your community, it's another thing to make sure that you don't destroy it while you're doing it. And I think that's a big reason for our success over the last 10 years, is we have dedicated, and I say we because we've had some great town councils and elected officials there, great fellow staff, all committed to making sure that the growth that occurs there makes sense, that it follows our town's general plan, that it enhances the community in more ways than just financially.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've seen, for the last 5 years, I've seen some of that growth and changes in Camp Verde, and it's been really interesting to follow what's been happening. Everything from the new parks and trails to the new RV parks even.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you've recently retired, so this is your opportunity to tell us what are some of the highlights.
Oh my gosh, it's been a great ride. That's what I have told everybody. I never dreamed when I first decided that I was going to step out from behind the word processor as a newspaper reporter to actually going to what the newspaper business calls the dark side, which is government. I didn't realize it would be as I knew it'd be challenging, but I didn't realize it'd be this rewarding. And I've been fortunate to have organizations like the Friends, the Nature Conservancy, other great conservation-minded people at our side the whole time. And so many of the programs that we've rolled out, from first thing we did early on was a river recreation master plan to kind of get our arms around what was going on along the river and start to build out a plan going forward so that we can manage that corridor. We did a urban upland trail plan, which kind of gave us the map, the groundwork to go out and work with other land managers like the U.S. Forest Service on creating a network of trailheads and trails that didn't end up in some of the problems like Sedona's had. They got trailheads in neighborhoods that are an issue, we have been able to sort of push that recreation out onto the Forest Service land and build a network of trailheads that doesn't interfere with people's lives.
So let me stop you there, because you just said something that I find really fascinating, that it sounds like you listened to the community when you built that plan, when you developed the plan. So what did you do to actually get community input into the plan? You guys didn't just build these plans out of your own head as government people.
No, we didn't, and that was again, I think that's the reason for the success. In both of those planning exercises, we brought the community in for their input. There'd also been an enormous amount of input over the last 2 or 3 decades. There have been efforts by the town to establish trail networks in certain areas. There's been a planning map out there for years, but nobody pulled it all together into a cohesive plan. It talked about, here's priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This is what we're going to do over the next few years, and try and make a concerted effort to fill in all those blanks that were just never being filled in. Quite frankly, we didn't have a trail in Camp Verde when I came to work for the town of Camp Verde. We did not have a single trail that actually came into the town. And we have 3 now and 6 more on their way.
Wow.
So, I mean, we are actually building the trail network. We had some old trailheads, but they were run down, unsafe, and we have come in there, received grants from several different parties, primarily Arizona State Parks, to go and establish at least a half a dozen nice trailheads with amenities, restrooms, adequate parking, maps, the things you need to do to, quote, manage a network like that.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite trail?
My favorite one right now is the Verde Vista Trail, which goes out of the town's big sports park and goes up on top of the White Hills. It's a really neat trail in the sense that it has the most spectacular view from up top. You can see quite a way south downstream on the Verde River from there, as well as upstream. It just has a stunning viewpoints. 5-mile hike. It's a little bit of a puff to the top of but it's well worth the trip. And it was designed. It's where I used to walk my dogs. And I went to the Forest Service and said, I need a trail, and I know just the place to put it. And they did it. That was Coconino National Forest. I'm pretty appreciative of that. So.
Yeah. Wow. That's the one of the perks of being the economic development director in Town of Camp Verde, I guess.
Yeah. Come take your dog for a walk, or I took my dog for a walk.
So I interrupted you. You were talking about some of the highlights.
Yes. So some other ones would be the Verde Growing Project, which is near and dear to my heart. I come from a farming family. I come from a 3rd-generation Arizona family that farmed and established some of the early farms, citrus and cotton, in the Phoenix area. And I have always thought that it was one of the defining pieces of Camp Verde and something that was well worth protecting going into the future. So building a program that promoted the agriculture, not just in Camp Verde, but in the Verde Valley as a whole, to me was really kind of critical to ensuring that it had that has long-term survivability. You guys, Nature Conservancy, others, have been instrumental in creating conservation easements on a lot of the old farms that were left in Camp Verde, which means there'll be farms in perpetuity. So I think there's an obligation on the town's part to ensure that there's a financial viability to those farms. So doing things like the Sonoma Mall project, doing things like all the promotional work we do with our smaller growers, all those things are just critical to the survivability. We soon to have a meat processing facility in there. Well, people ask why, and I said, you actually have 13 boutique meat producers, cattle primarily, in Camp Verde alone, not to mention what's else in the surrounding area. Mm-hmm. And to me, you've got to find ways and the investment to ensure that those businesses can not only survive but actually grow.
So you're preserving farming not only as a way of life, but as an economically viable job, an economically viable business.
Absolutely, and I think that's absolutely critical to Camp Verde's long-term future. I can't imagine people are going to come You can't change that. They will arrive. The question is, can you manage it? And can you get them to buy into what it is, who you are? And so a lot of our work is explaining to developers when they come in here, this is what Camp Verde is all about. It's a great little agricultural community. This is what we envision for the future. And I can tell you it's been really successful because a lot of developers, they really want to know, they don't want to come in and just do something, tear it up, at least not the good ones anyway. They want to come in and do something that benefits the community they're in, because in most instances these are long-term investments and they don't want to leave a track record of having destroyed the place.
Yeah, and Camp Verde's in an enviable location, right on I-17.
Yeah, between 17 and the river and the 260, I mean, it just has, strategically speaking, it's an ideal spot to be.
Yeah, and one other thing that I found really interesting, when the 2020 census came out, Camp Verde grew significantly.
It did. It was the fastest growing one in the last decade, and poised for more growth. So that's why the work that we do is so critical. The work we do to build, this is where infrastructure plays a big role. Getting the sewer connection to every single home in Camp Verde eventually is a goal that we have to continue to pursue, because we've got to use and reuse our water resources. That's ultimately to protect the river. I believe that growth is not incompatible with conservation. I think working together, I think you can find dozens of great solutions out there to mitigate the impacts.
Yeah, and a sewer connection, why is that important?
Well, you just reuse water. You get to use it over and over. As a matter of fact, we have a 100-acre sports complex, which the town has made a significant investment in. It's all reuse water, every bit of it. So we're watering fields out there with reuse water, and that I think that is another way to explain to developers and stuff, this is what's important to us. It's important to us enough that I think half of the cost of that park, which is somewhere around $12–14 million, half of it has been invested in just water reuse on the property.
That's pretty impressive. This region is known for having a lot of water wells. Everybody having their own well, everybody having their own septic system, and sounds like Camp Verde has a different vision.
We do, and we have a long-term vision, and that long-term vision is making sure that river is still here generations into the future. And it's going to take a lot of collaboration, cooperation from everybody. That includes the developers, the government, the people who live there, and all of us who frankly care about it.
Yeah. No, that's quite amazing. We're getting close to a break, so I wanted to ask you just a real quick question. If you could just give me, and I might ask you this question again later, but before we go on break, tell me one favorite memory, just like one thing that stands out in your time working for Camp Verde.
Oh wow, gosh, there's a bunch of them. I think one of the things that set the course for us, and this doesn't have to do with the placemaking or the river stuff, but when we received the Opportunity Zone designation from the federal government back in 2018, it flipped the whole thing.
Yeah.
It was our first opportunity to really see some, what I call developers with deep pockets. Developers who could come in there, and when you told them what you wanted to do, could do those sort of things. The RV park is a classic example of that. They're using less water on 65 acres. It's creating a huge revenue stream for the state. And what we were using on 9 acres when it was a farm. There were 9 acres that were farmed in there historically.
Yeah. And
the water use is significantly less than what that farm used.
Yeah.
And that was a collaborative effort between the developer and the town. But it's a classic example. They came in here because of the Opportunity Zone, turned into be a great development company, turned into be good partners with us.
Yeah, and that's a story that I think people don't often understand, that you can have a development that uses less water.
Yeah. No,
development.
Yeah, it's
or recreational development.
Honestly, done collaboratively, there's a bunch of great ways to do that. It's not always the case, but it can be the case. Your water exchange programs, the Verde River Exchange, get people to collaborate on efforts like that. You'd be surprised how many people kind of think, well, that's a great idea. Not to mention they go, well, I could make a long-term investment in this place because these people care about what it looks like down the road.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm going to have more questions for you after the break, but it's time now for a short break, and we'll be right back. Back with listening to the Verde River and Steve Ayers, our guest today. So let's dive right back in, Steve. One of the significant things that happened in certainly the last 5 years, I'm not quite sure how long it took to make this happen, is the designation of 17 miles of the Verde, where it flows through town, as an Arizona Important Bird Area. How did that happen, and what does that mean for Camp Verde?
Well, that's where a planning effort is so important. When we did the River Recreation Master Plan, I never even gave it any thought, but it came up time and again in our comments to the public. And the comments to the public that I thought were most significant was that the one thing that people along the river appreciated most, number one on their list, was birds and wildlife. And so people who live along the river, to them that was a really, really important aspect of it, protecting it and making sure that it's appreciated by both residents and visitors. So during the course of that, we talked about the IBA concept was brought up, resoundingly approved by everybody that was involved in the process. And
it may be obvious in the name, but what is an important bird area? What is an Arizona important bird area?
Oh, well, that's probably worth saying.
Yeah.
So, gee, it's important. No.
Yeah, it's just important.
So the Audubon Society gives a designation for an important birding area when there are an adequate number of species. Many of them are endangered or threatened species in there. Migration species that come through the corridor. It tells other birders and anybody who has an interest in birds that this is an area that attracts a very diverse population of birds. And the process by which you get it is you don't just get it. You have to prove that point. Mm-hmm. And there was a team of birders that spent a year in Camp Verde, all 4 seasons, basically counting birds, counting species, and sort of proving the point that this is an area of great significance to the bird population of the state. And it includes the entire floodplain of the Verde River through Camp Verde, along with the reaches of Wet Beaver Creek and West Clear Creek also are included in that.
Oh,
So
I didn't realize that, all the way up to Wet Beaver.
So basically, as long as it was a flowing stream, we included the floodplain of it. And so I can tell you, just looking at all of the bird surveys that they did, there was a lot of work put into that application process to get it established. And I'd like to see if we could spend some more time on it here in the next few years, getting it signed a little better so people understand it's out there. As we build out all of our riverfront parks, we'll include that information with each one of them, because it's a big deal. I think it is, and I think people who live along the river are proud to put the signs up in their own yard. This is an important birding area.
Yeah. No, that's quite amazing. I was not any part at all of making it happen. It just happened, and thought, wow, this is really cool. We've got another Arizona important bird area in the Verde Valley. So Camp Verde is a river city, and part of that, important bird area, that's one of the benefits of being a river city. Are there other other things about Camp Verde being a river city that you can think of that have made it a unique place to work and live?
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, it's unique in Arizona. I mean, the Gila is dry. The salt below Phoenix is dry. Santa Cruz is dry. San Pedro plays hide and seek, but it's largely dry. So to have that, a flowing river in your community, and a stretch 17 miles long that remains wet all year long, sets us apart. And it's probably the longest stretch of flowing river in any community in the state. I don't know of any other, although I could be wrong. Probably Lake Havasu, or probably one of those ones along the Colorado.
You'd have to go to the border, yeah. You'd have to go to Colorado.
Yeah. So internally, it makes it totally unique, and it's a reason that people live there. It's a reason that people want to come there, and protecting it and the flows, I think, is even in our general plan, which has been voted on by the population by the residents of the town. It's their number one thing. It's what defines Camp Verde, and that's why it's of such a critical importance to us that as we go forward, this remains the sort of the guiding post, guidelight to where we go in the future, because it's naked, it's on the surface, and if you mess it up, the rest of the world's going to see it.
Yeah. You think about so many, cities are founded along rivers, typically.
They are.
And then they typically polluted those rivers, dried up those rivers, didn't treat them well. And I think the last 20 or 30 years has been all about cities turning around and realizing that they have a great resource in a river, and then trying to make up for the sins of the past. And that didn't happen with Camp Verde because you never turned your back on it.
Well, we were fortunate in that Camp Verde had a very no-growth way about it. There were significant landholders there who, frankly, weren't really interested in whether they sold the property or not. Interstate 17 came through, and it might as well just gone around the town because nobody really wanted to take advantage of it. And it really wasn't until the last recession, when a lot of people packed up and left town, their kids left, people began to take a little bit different attitude. That's why in 2012 the council created the position of an economic development person there to play a role in not only growth but managing growth.
Yeah, that's so appropriate. All right, another time for another favorite memory, this one on the river.
Oh, that's a fairly easy one. I've been on the Verde River since I was a kid, but it wasn't until 2012, the year before I came to work for the Town of Camp Verde. Probably was perfect timing for it. I had the opportunity to go with the U.S. Forest Service down the Wild and Scenic, and we floated from Childs down to Horseshoe, and it was 4 days of just absolute beauty. And for a guy who doesn't kayak or canoe very well, a little bit of terror at times, but it's all good.
I'm still waiting for that invitation. I've not yet been down the Wild and Scenic stretch.
Oh my gosh, Nancy! Yeah, it's you don't realize how remote the Verde River is in that stretch until you're on it in a boat. And we went down there because one of the crazy things that we had done when I was a journalist, one of the last things I did was I got in an argument with my mom one time as to where the geographic center of the state of Arizona was. So we worked on that with the Arizona State, with some guys that were surveyors, the Arizona Land Surveyors Association, and determined that it was down at the confluence of the Verde and the East Verde River.
Oh,
so we all floated down there. We called it the Journey to the Center of Arizona. And we went down there and we marked the spot, which is about a half a mile south of the East Verde and about a half a mile east of the Verde River at that confluence. And
did you put one of those surveyor's marks down, or you just...
We put an ammunition can down there with a bunch of information.
Okay.
Including the articles that were posted in the newspaper about the creation of this. So Anyway, that's kind of what led to the trip, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was
yeah.
a blast,
That's
and it
great.
gave me a whole new appreciation for the river itself, and why it's so critical that we continue to maintain. Not that I didn't have an appreciation, but now I was seeing what we do in Camp Verde can affect what's happening down in these remote areas and these remote canyons down there.
Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure that as you've left the town of Camp Verde, there's a lot of projects and things that are left undone, and there are also projects that you want to keep doing in your personal life. What are your future plans?
Well, we've talked about doing possibly staying on with the town in some kind of a consulting capacity. We'll see where that goes. To help them finish up these trailheads, the River Recreation Master Plan. There's the John Parsons Riverfront Preserve at I-17, which we're just getting underway, building on that. We have the Homestead Park Project, which could have some major significance for the Friends. We've talked about with you guys about possibly getting an education center down there, which could house the Friends for years to come. That's an 80-acre parcel, half owned by state parks and half owned by the federal government, the National Park, or the U.S. Forest Service. And it is an absolutely spectacular piece of property, absolutely in the center of town. You can walk down in there and you would not even know you're in Camp Verde.
Mm-hmm. It is beautiful. I've been there. We've talked about the River Center and the possibility of building that. That's exciting.
It's exciting, and we'll see where that goes. So that's a project for me. My good friend Chip Norton, who's kind of the founder of Friends, and I started an enterprise several years back, 2018, called Sonoma Malt. And Sonoma Malt's a water-saving project in which we have converted high-water use crops such as alfalfa and corn to low-water use barley. And then Sonoma Malt malts that. And malting is a process of basically germinating the seed and then drying it when it's packed full of all the good stuff you need to make beer from.
Good sugars. Yeah.
And that business has taken in a recent investor, which has made the amount of barley that'll be coming in on there pretty significant. So I am helping Chip with the marketing of that barley. So that's a passion, to try and create this, what we call a market-based solution to a conservation problem, one where you can actually turn a profit and do something good for a river.
That's fantastic. Are you going to be one of those people that's busier in retirement than you were in when you had a job?
My wife is already calling me a failure.
Failure at retirement?
Failure at
No.
retirement.
Well, it's an opportunity to give back to your community in a different way.
It is, and it's just something you build a passion for over a period of time. Really, from the time that I stepped away from my sales and marketing career into the journalism career and henceforth into this, I've just been kind of like a steady, I don't know, I find myself just, the further you get into it, the more fun it is and the more interesting it is and the more passion you have for making sure that all these things get taken care of, or you at least come up with creating a new generation of individuals that will want to continue the work that you're doing. I mean, ultimately, the stage has been set to make some significant changes in how we view ourselves, how we view the river, how we view our community, and I think there's a whole generation of younger people right now that are just totally onto that, and they get it.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't think our work's going to be for naught. I think it'll just continue well in the future. Yours as well as what we're doing over in Camp Verde.
Yeah, well, certainly Friends of the Verde River has a great deal of respect and appreciation for the work that you've done. I myself personally also, not just the organization, and I know that you will continue contributing to the town. Seems like there's just a lot of opportunities, and you're leaving this city in a great place.
I think so, and again, I wanna emphasize that this is all happening all because of all the friends I have and everybody else that we've had as partners on this. I've told others, I've spoken about the work that we've been doing up here to other folks in my circle of economic developers, and they all just really think it's just spectacular what's been accomplished up here, not just in Camp Verde, but in Clarkdale and Cottonwood and the Verde Valley. And I tell them, I said, I couldn't have done any of this stuff if the ball wasn't already teed up by Nature Conservancy, Friends of the Verde River, Audubon, dozens of other people who just frankly cared, and there was stuff even prior to that. The Walton investment here in the Verde River, and now the Nanopolium investments in that. So it takes everybody to make it work. I just get to ride on the coattails of all these folks and sort of be the cheerleader and throw resources from the town and at least express the fact that we're willing to be partners in all this stuff. And that's the role I played in it.
Yeah.
And I'm damn lucky to be here.
Yeah. All right, I have another opportunity for another favorite moment, or favorite animal, or favorite experience. Your choice here.
Oh my goodness. Well, my wife and I live in Camp Verde in a house not too far from, actually in the confluence of Beaver Creek and the Verde River, right around the corner from the Hauser farm. And I have two big dogs that both came to me. Interestingly, they both came the first one came while I was doing down the river.
Oh, wow.
He showed up at my house. My wife picked him up at some place, and then I got a hound dog named Ellie Mae. Their names are Jethro and Ellie Mae.
Oh, funny.
From the Beverly Hillbillies fame. Ellie Mae's a hound dog, and truly love them. They're our center of our life. My daughter lives in Europe, so I don't get to see her as often as I'd like to see, so I have two dogs right now to fill in that void. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the cat.
The cat, the grumpy cat?
The truculent cat?
Truculent cat?
Whatever the term is you want to use.
Yeah.
Yes, no, that's PETA. It stands for pain in the ass. That's what the name stands for.
Seriously.
She literally came up on my front porch, and I opened the front door, and she walked in, and that's how she came to my house. I didn't go adopt her. She sort of moved in.
That's so funny.
I know.
So what's your first vacation after retirement? Do you have it planned?
Yeah, I'm going to probably spend a little bit of time. My daughter lives in Switzerland. She's married and lives in Geneva. And so I try and make a trip once a year to go see her, but it's always really short, 7 days, 10 days. I'd like to spend 3 or 4 weeks, if I could, this year. My wife and I have an RV. We'd like to spend a little bit of time traveling around, not only in the state, but up into Oregon and the Northwest. We really like that part of the country too. And I'll busy myself with enough traveling, I think. Yeah, that's basically our plan, is to be able to spend a little bit more time together. My wife, Susan, has not been, she's not a public person and could care less about the fact that I'm in government or that I was a newspaper reporter or any of those other things. Mm-hmm. She's a loving wife and a perfect person to spend my retirement years with, so I need to find balance in my life now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's so wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Steve, for joining me, for listening to the Verde. This episode is all about Steve Ayers and the town of Camp Verde, his career, and future great things that are going to be happening with the town of Camp Verde, even after Steve Ayers is no longer their economic development director. So thank you, viewers, for listening to this episode of Listening to the Verde. And for more episodes and to learn more about the Verde River and the Verde River watershed, please visit verderiver.org/listening. Thank you very much, everybody.
Listening to the Verde is brought to you by Friends of the Verde River. Please visit verderiver.org/listening for more videos and resources.